Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call our meeting to order for Finance Economic Development Committee, July 3rd, 2018. Mayor has sent his regret for today's meeting. I don't know why, but I think he only did about 100 events yesterday. Declaration of interest? None. Confirmation of minute of minute 28 June 5th, 2018. On the minute, okay? Okay, thank you. Item number 1, we have a presentation from Mr. Manconi, the GM Transportation Service, so we'll hold item number 1. Item number 2, Invest Ottawa. We do have a motion from Deputy Mayor Taylor. Councillor Taylor, if you could read your motion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Therefore, be it resolved that Finance and Economic Development Committee waive the rules of procedure to receive the presentation listed as item 2 on today's FEDCO agenda and pursuant to subsection 83(4)A, dispense with the requirement for staff to provide a separate written report on the presentation.
On the motion? Okay, thank you. So we'll hold item 2 for presentation from Invest Ottawa. Item number 3, Office of the City Clerk and Solicitor, amendment to the compensation of the Spark Street Business Improvement Area Board of Management. On the item? Okay, thank you. Item number 4, appointment to Canada Central Business Improvement Area, BIA, so that the Finance Economic Development Committee recommend Council approve the appointment of Alana Hainin to the Canada Central Business Improvement Area Board of Management for the term expiring November 30, 2018. On the item? Okay, thank you. Item number 5, Corporate Service Department, declaration of surplus and transfer of 1825 Trim Road to Ottawa Community Land Development Corporation for further disposal and provision of their resources for the corporate real estate office. On the item? Okay, thank you. Item number 6, application for approval for expropriate land at Albion Road and Leitrim Road intersection pursuant to Section 4 of the Expropriation Act. On the item? Okay, thank you. Item number 7 is surplus land declaration 2175 10th Line Road. On the item? Okay. Item number 8, designate 23.587 square feet at 1221 Silver Road as a municipal capital facility. On the item? Okay, thank you. Item number 9, institution designated as a liable for 2018 annual levy pursuant to Section 1, 2, 3, and 5 of the Municipal Act, and that the Finance and Economic Development Committee recommend to Council approval. On the item? Okay, thank you. Item number 10, Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development, that the Ontario Main Street Revitalization Initiative. On the item? Okay, thank you. So we'll go to item number 1 and we'll turn to Mr. Manconi for presentation. Good morning, Mr. Manconi.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Today we're taking a bit of a different approach to our presentation. We're going to we're going to show you a video that we've done of the above ground stations, and we used our drones that we acquired a little while ago It was taken about 3 weeks ago on a weekend. So you will see some of the crews working along the corridor. So that'll be the front part of the presentation. And then I'm going to walk you through some slides for the underground stations, and then finish off with some metrics and the monitoring program that we're looking at also. And again, I'm looking to the tech to get the thing going. What you're going to see when the drones start in terms of the stations is it's a reminder of how enormous the project is, but also if you look at all the connection points to it, the transfer stations, you'll see some of the connections in terms of the ped paths and so forth. So that's Tunney's, and we're going to start in an easterly direction, starting at Tunney's, heading to Blair. Next, Mr. Chair, I'll walk you through the underground station. So this is Saint Laurent, and you're starting to see the final touches go in, everything from wayfinding to emergency signs and lighting and cameras and speakers that you've seen in past presentations. Rideau Station, this is an important picture. Rideau Station, as you've heard me say over and over again, is a critical link to achieving November. What you see there is the station, as I mentioned before, fully loaded with equipment, material, and resources. They are operating 24/7. This is the one to watch in terms of getting to November, and RTG is got really strict oversight in terms of it, because obviously this is the one that was impacted the most with the sinkhole. What you see on the ceiling are two things. There's a scaffolding that's right at the forefront of the picture. That's a temporary arrangement to provide the overhead power for the trains so that we can start running trains later this summer through the tunnel for testing and commissioning. And then what you see in the upper ceiling is 9 kilometers of conduit. That's to continue all the fiber, the wiring, the systems integration through that station. So it's about 9 kilometers of conduit, and then obviously wiring that goes through that. It's enormous. And again, RTG is operating 24/7 in there. This is the last vent shaft that's being completed. That was June 16th. This is right on Rideau Street. Many people were asking, what's that about? I thought the excavation was done. This completes all of the excavation works. That's before they poured, and then on June 26th, that's the final concrete. So this is the ventilation for the system underneath. And they're probably backfilling there this week, and then they'll reinstate the road and the abutting sidewalk. So that's another major milestone. Looks very simplistic, but it's a critical system to ensuring that there's proper ventilation throughout the entire system. And Rideau, I remind you, is your deepest station. Parliament, this is at the platform level, some ceiling work that needs to be completed, and the track you've seen before in the catenary and the platform edges are poured with the yellow safety strip along the edge of that. And then Lion, those voids that you see in the background, those are for the fare vending machines. They were completed on Friday. This is a bit of a dated picture of 3 weeks ago. Lion Station, the fare gates are all in. Blair has them, and Saint Laurent has them also, including the fare vending equipment. This is an exterior view of Lion Station, some of the finishing touches on the exteriors. And then, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I thought I'd share some key project metrics that, again, I think go hand in hand with the pictures and the videos that you've seen. The enormity and the scale of this project is significant. It is the largest one that you've ever taken in the history of the city. 34 rail cars, 60 elevators, 41 escalators throughout the system, 883 closed-circuit television cameras for security and operational matters, 1,900 passenger announcement speakers scattered throughout the system, almost 50 passenger information display boards. Those are the ones that talk about the next train when it's arriving, 133 fare gates, 54 fare vending machines, lots of infrastructure, and all of those systems, and I could give you pages of subsystems within those, need to communicate seamlessly in a singular fashion to make sure that the customer experience end-to-end is positive all the time. And then the other things that I remind people of is if you flash back to 5 or 6 years ago when you were approving this project, the business case as to, yes, it's a transit project, but also it's an economic stimulus project. Almost 7 million person hours of work to date. 800 million in local contracts have been awarded to local suppliers. And once it's completed, it will have generated 3,200 person years of employment in the trades industry. So the key activities we continue to monitor is Rideau Station. It's important. The western stations, particularly Tunney's and Bayview, where at Tunney's there's all the bus transfers from the west and the south. The end-to-end system verifications of those systems and the subsystems that we've talked about in previous presentations. The fare gates and the ticket vending machines that are going very well. And then we want to see multiple trains operating in full communication-based train control systems on the eastern alignment. That's where all the testing is being done right now. Vehicle testing along the western alignment. There is one vehicle still parked out there. It's doing some subsystem testing right now. We want to see the end-to-end testing from Blair to Tunney's. and then obviously full fleet operational testing in the communication-based train control mode. And then we are continuing to monitor RTG's schedule. We meet with them literally every day at various levels. Mr. Cripps and I meet with them also on a regular basis, and we're continuing to offer our support and assistance in anything the city needs to do to achieve the November 2nd. And I want to thank Mr. Willis and his team, because they've been instrumental in helping us map out how we do occupancy permits. So we're looking at Blair right now. That'll be our first fully occupied station. And Mr. Willis's team has been very innovative in doing a two-step process, which is helping RTG get closer and closer to that November 2nd date. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Mancone. And we do have a question from Councillor Eglai.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Mancone, the most persistent question that I'm getting from residents is, let me start at the beginning again. Sorry. So I'm really pleased that you started by showing us various stations and the state of construction, because the most consistent question that I'm getting from residents is about Tunney's Pasture, that huge important transit hub that we're putting in there. And there's some concern about what is that going to be like in the morning when I'm trying to get to work, and at the end of the day when I'm trying to get home. So I'm wondering, I have a two-part question for you. I'm wondering if you could walk somebody through for the committee. You're getting on your bus at Baseline Station and you're going to Tunney's to transfer to get to work downtown. Can you walk us through what that person can expect to see at rush hour in the morning? And then can you explain how you're going to get that message out to residents in advance of whatever date in November that this goes forward? Because this really is a sea change, right? We're going to a whole different level, a whole different type of transportation in the city. So walk us through, I get on my bus at Baseline, what happens next until I get to work downtown, and then again explain how you're going to send that out to the broader base of customers.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. That is, I believe, probably the number one question that's out there. And I'll start with the back end if I can. So as part of the Ready for Rail campaign, as soon as we take early occupancy of, or immediate occupancy of Blair, we're doing a end-to-end video and information package that will be provided to you, and we're going to flood the market with it. And it's going to start from as soon as you get to your bus stop, and what that experience that you're talking about is going to be, because that is the number one question. If you remember, we did focus groups 3 years ago. We did various personas, all kinds of users, those that know the system inside out to those that are only taking it the first time. And the feedback from the customer group was, we want to know exactly what that journey looks like. We accept there's going to be a transfer. We understand the value proposition to us. So in simple terms, it'll be you tap your card, you get on the bus, you tap your card, you will go to one of those transfer stations, and your bus, whatever that route is, will stop at the exact same location every single day, and it'll be clearly marked, and you will get off that bus and you'll go down and catch the train. And we'll remind everybody that you don't need to run for the train, because if you miss the train during peak hours, you just have to wait another 3.5 minutes and the next train will arrive. You don't have to jockey for position because it's directional. You're either going east or west. But more importantly, it's the return that people have asked about. You get off the train, you take your escalator, elevator, whatever you choose, or stairs to go up to the platform, and that bus that you took in the morning will be in the exact same spot, clearly marked. And the team is doing some phenomenal work as to how we do that signage. We looked at other transfer areas. Chicago, Montreal has similar types of operations, because everybody told us in the focus groups, I understand that getting to the train, I don't need to worry about the schedule because the trains are very frequent. It's my return home, snowstorm, all sorts of things. And so we even have some additional operational enhancements that we've done based on the focus groups. We're going to have an amazing video that's going to show that end to end. You're literally going to walk through all those pieces with real people. It won't be graphics. It'll be live, and it starts right from the bus stop all the way through, and then the return trip home.
Just a quick follow-up. I know what the answer is, but if you say it, hopefully more people will pick it up. So the question also is, either on the way in or the way out, how many times do I have to tap? So do I have to get on that bus, which is going to be quite busy at the end of the day to go home? Are we all going to have to line up and tap to get on the bus?
No, because you're in paid fare zones on certain stations. The transfer ones have that. All but two, I believe, have paid fare zones, so no, you don't. The only time you're tapping, again, is if you go out of the paid fare zone and you come back in, or you're walking up from the street and so forth. But once you've tapped on your bus, it drops you off. So that whole Tunney's platform area, that's all a paid fare zone, and so you won't have to tap again.
So what's the approximate timeline then, John, on when we might get our hands on this video that we can share through our newsletters, our websites?
It's weeks away at most. We're just waiting to get that occupancy permit for Blair, so that we want to show people going down escalators, elevators, tapping, all those things. So it's imminent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Aguilar. Councillor Dean.
So we're getting closer and closer, and there still seems like there's a lot to do. And when I was looking at the Rideau station, I mean, it's hard to know what you're looking at because there's a lot to see there. But where is your confidence level now in their ability to put this all together and hand over the keys to the system in November?
So RTG continues to say it's November 2nd for them. We still need some more time to get to that ultimate confidence. You've asked me this question in the committee, and I totally understand it. I know everybody's looking for that guarantee, which I will not give. I'll give you that guarantee when I can give you that guarantee that we're going to make November 2nd. I like what I'm seeing. We had some very significant milestones last week, and I can tell you this, Councillor, that every single day matters from now to November 2nd. Mr. Cripps and myself and Mr. Kanalakis are all breathing a little bit better in that they had some really good results on some of the vehicle testing. We had a two-car train pass what's called level 3 testing on the communication-based train control. That means it can operate fully in automated mode. And we now have a target date later in July to start running vehicles in fully automated mode. And a reminder, we have a person in the cab all the time. But you will see by the end of July vehicles running based on those systems and subsystems operating the vehicle. That gives us some comfort. We need to stay focused on Rideau. We need to stay focused on the vehicle testing and commissioning and all those systems talking to each other. And we need to stay focused on, it sounds pretty boring, but it's important. It's called the System Assurance Program. It's documentation and sign-off of thousands of pieces of documents that basically get signed off by the independent safety certifier that says you're good to go. And as we've all said, we're not going to launch that system until we're good to go from a safety perspective, because that trumps everything. So comfort is increasing every day. I like what I see by the new management team of RTG. They're focused. There's no surprises from them and from us. And they understand that I come here on a monthly basis, and I told them that Councillor Dean's asked me at every meeting, when can I guarantee that November 2nd is going to be achievable? And
I'm damaged by the Presto implementation. I just saw behind the scenes how difficult it actually is to make all those systems talk to each other, and that was small potatoes compared to what you're doing here now. And so I look at that, it looks like there's an awful lot to do with 16 weeks to hand over something like that. It seems monumental to me.
Yeah, I think on the Presto thing, I think we learned a lot. And, you only need to look at other large IT implementation systems, and you do not want to get too overly optimistic on this stuff. I do, other than Rideau, I don't worry about the civil. RTG has done some phenomenal things to accelerate some things. People often ask me, why aren't those stations all closed up? There's all the glasses missing, and they don't understand that they have to go and fasten in all those little silver fasteners that look really nice and sharp when they're done. But literally, if you go by Bayview, there was none at the beginning of the week, and by the end of the week, there was hundreds of them up there. So once those are up, the glass just starts to get sealed up. And those pictures and the drones are dated about almost 3 weeks now. So, but every day matters, and RTG knows the importance of getting certainty. And as I've told committee and council, I will not surprise you, a day or two before November 2nd saying we're not ready. We understand that we have to give council advance notice if there's going to be any changes.
How closely is the city involved in monitoring? Like, do you have milestones all set out that you know you need to make in a certain time frame in order to make this November 2nd date?
If you remember, Presto, what we did back then was, remember how everybody wanted to monitor everything and it got so complex, and this often happens with large-scale projects. Really, this project, we've narrowed it down to about 6 key things that we need to monitor to know whether or not we're going to make November 2nd. And so had we not made the vehicle issue last week, I'd be more concerned than I am right now. For example, had the fare gates and the vending machines not been going in seamlessly as they are right now, we'd be concerned. Had RTG not brought together a really good comprehensive plan on the system assurance, which they have, to get all those thousands of documents signed up, we'd be more concerned than we are. Rideau Station, when we were down there for the inspection 3 weeks ago, and it's not just paper exercises. We go and see and touch and feel, and when I got in there and I saw the temporary arrangement for the catenary and things like that, those specific things are important. So really, it's thousands of line items on a project Gantt chart, but you can narrow it down to about 6 groupings of key activities. But if you don't make those, you're not going to make everything else.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. Councillor Harder.
Yeah, thank you. So I was listening, John, to you talking about when you'd have communication ready in that for us to help you with. And Councillor Eglai and I were wondering how that's going to be impacted. So I looked to Mr. O'Connor. As you said, it's the largest, and as the Mayor has said, it's the largest investment that this city has ever made since its incorporation as Bytown. So way, way back. And so we have a, what's it called? It's not a drop dead. What's it called? Blackout. I always think of it as the drop dead kind of space. But I want to make sure that this would be definitely part of our city council job, and we would not be restricted in trying to get very vital information out to the public.
Mr. Chair, that's actually a very good question. The GMI and I have had several discussions with regards to this very point on a number of issues related to LRT. In fact, the August 23rd blackout date will, eventually be upon us. However, the election-related resources policy actually sets out an exemption, which I've already discussed with the GM, and it states that despite the blackout period, where an emergency occurs or a non-emergency related community issue, then I can advise that the appropriate channels will be used, including all members of council. And as the city's #1 project, I've already had this discussion, and we will be, if John can't come in and staff before August 23rd, I would be asking members of council to use their communications in this regard.
Because even if it's before August 23rd, it's going to be more and more important to keep the community as well. We are a long way in Nepean and Canada, Stittsville from the closest LRT. So the big concern is going to be those buses and whether they're going to be running and they're going to be on time and that sort of thing. So I think that it's not going to be a one-trick pony for us. We're actually going to have to be regularly part of this because, in the last election, only 34% of the people in Barrhaven voted. The rest of the people expect me to keep them up to speed on stuff. They look to me. I've been there for 21 years, and I think that assuming that they're going to pay attention to the city and not to the person that they figure is going to give them the answer to everything, and this weekend's been real fun, that to me is really important. So I think that we have to go beyond just when we're going to have that news and the flexibility of the ongoing outreach on LRT. I don't know about the rest of you, but I think it's going to be really important. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I can assure you that, yes, the video is important, but to Councillor Harder's point, it is all incremental, planned, and we didn't want a big bang. We don't want to inundate the customers. And, yes, it is citywide because, as I said, we mapped out 8 personas when we did the customer journey mapping. And there were people from suburbia that don't have a train station next to them. How do I get to that train and so forth? How do I do the transfer? We have all their questions. So, and you will be along with us every step of the way. As Mr. O'Connor said, we've cleared that hurdle.
So, just one other thing. I have several parking rides. But the biggest one is Fallowfield. I think that there would be a lot of logic. That's a place where we do a lot of large things, everything from waste drop-off to reaching out to people, because we know that there's a lot of people. There's however many thousands of parking spots. People are coming there on other buses. They're changing there. And I think that legitimately that's a place where people are actually thinking about transit. So I would like to have organized so that we know specific dates that would be important and you'd be ready to have an information event as people are getting onto the buses. I think the same thing would be said out in, certainly in Canada, where they have the Eagleson Park and Ride, etc. I think that I don't want to diminish the fact that we want the public to be as ready as possible for the great opportunity that this city is going to see.
I agree with you, Councillor. I just want to remind everybody that if you look at the complexity of the detours that we did, it's the same scope in terms of flooding it to the point they beg us to stop communicating. That's success on this stuff. So yeah, we'll be everywhere, and we're certainly open to ideas and suggestions, and councillors will get every single piece of the information that we're putting out, and that now that Mr. O'Connor is clear, you can use it in any fashion you see fit.
And if it makes it any easier, Mr. O'Connor, I wouldn't be adverse. There's now 3 people running against me. If you were to tell them that this event was going on, should they want to avail themselves? Maybe that's a way around it.
I'll certainly take that under advisement, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harder. Councillor Hubley.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Just to echo Councillor Harder's points, Mr. McConan, we spoke recently with your staff as well too about the Eagleson Park and Ride and the fact that we didn't get the uplift or the success we were hoping for with the Innovation Park and Ride, and I'm afraid that as LRT comes online and that uptake in ridership takes place from the suburbs, that an already overcrowded park and ride is going to get worse. So I'd like some assurances that we are working on some things to try to get people to either use the Canadian Tire parking lot or the Innovation.
Yes, we have, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Chair, I also want to mention that the city may be in a heat wave, but I think health throws over. Councillor Harder's interested in the rules.
She didn't hear it, though. That's okay. Thank you very much. Any other question for... okay. On Mr. Manconi's presentation, received. Thank you very much, Mr. Manconi. And now we go to our second presentation from Invest Ottawa, and we call Mr. Michael Tremblay, President and CEO, Invest Ottawa, and John Smith to the table.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just get started. I'll provide a very high-level overview in terms of where we stand as far as the City of Ottawa economic development initiatives are concerned, and just reminding FEDCO that in June of 2017, FEDCO and Council received and approved the 2016 Economic Development Strategy and Implementation and Update, and a key direction that flowed from that meeting was an update of the economic development priorities and work plan into 2017 and 2018. And the work plan that was presented and approved was really couched into a refocused economic development strategy within 4 broad pillars, and these are identified on the slide in front of you. It was a knowledge-based industry sector, tourism, creative and cultural industry sector, rural economic development, and urban services or main streets. The economic development programs and projects that the city is involved in initiating and moving forward fall into each of these 4 broad categories. Under the refocused ED strategy, the function of our department is to work with key partners in developing an overarching economic development strategy that builds on the key assets and opportunities, provide a strategic role for the city to support, direct, and guide economic development or economic growth, prosperity, and economic diversification as part of the larger city building agenda. And again, this is another key thing that was done through the realignment, was the amalgamation of economic development with long-range planning, so that the 2 pieces in fact talk to each other and they inform each other as we move forward in growing the city into the 21st century. The knowledge-based industry sector pillar is really recognized as the key pillar under which efforts need to be advanced to grow and diversify the city's economy, really building on the strong knowledge-based industry sector that we have, our public post-secondary institutions, our public government research function, health sciences, to name some of the key industry sectors that really are within that knowledge-based industries pillar. Economic development, we administer a number of initiatives within that pillar, including our innovation pilot project, the Smart City 2.0 initiative that we're moving forward with, supporting autonomous vehicle testing, coordination of talent file, immigrant entrepreneurial awards, and advancing high-impact economic development projects. The key partner of the city, however, in the knowledge-based industry sector is Invest Ottawa, and they play a very critical role in venture development, supporting startups, innovation, entrepreneurship, global expansion, as well as foreign direct investment. And Invest Ottawa, to really focus their energies and to continue building on the successes that they've managed to garner over the years that they've achieved, has developed a new strat plan to really focus their efforts. And that's really, I think, what Mike is going to be talking about today in terms of some of the things that Invest Ottawa has been able to achieve, and then highlighting sort of the key focus areas under strat plan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll turn it over to Mr. Tremblay now.
Okay. Commissioner Smith, Mr. Tremblay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee members, and thank you, John, for opening up our discussion this morning. I'd like to first start by thanking this committee for your support in investing in Invest Ottawa over its 5-year tenure. We were set up in 2012, and I do want to take you through some of the metrics and performance of our business. I also want to thank you for your support of Bayview Yards. I don't think any of us realized the impact that Bayview would have. And this morning, seeing the presentation on the LRT, knowing that Bayview is at the heart of the new track system, I really think is a game changer for the world of economic development as we know it. So I'm very, very excited about that potential. So I do want to spend some time with you really in 3 areas. I want to talk to you a little bit about our strategy and our new business model. A lot has changed, and I suspect it's been a while since you've been briefed by Invest Ottawa, so I look forward to doing that. I also want to talk about the progress that we've made in our 2 business areas. One is our venture development team, and the other is our global expansion area. And I'll provide some perspective on that shortly, along with some, I think, very interesting and revealing statistics that you may find quite useful in terms of looking at our business. And then finally discuss areas of future potential for this committee to consider as we move forward and consider budget planning in the future. In my tenure in this role, I've come to discover Ottawa again. I spent many years on the road working in global markets, and to discover that our city is chock full of capability. We have the highest density of tech capability in the country, but we're known and characterized as a government city. And I think part of why we have such a great tech capability is because we're a government city, something to embrace and build on. And to build a capacity to support all of that, we have the highest proportion of STEM student enrollment in Canada. We have over 20% of the country's STEM students here in the city of Ottawa, an opportunity for us to harvest and build on as we look at our economic development future. And so we have much to work with. We have much potential. We have a lot to do. So what I want to take you through now is a view of our business model. So we've dramatically changed our approach. We basically repivoted our whole business end to end. And the whole point of this exercise is really to have our city stand out, to be differentiated, to stand out from the herd. And so there's really two aspects of our business. The first one is our venture team. But before I do that, I'll talk a little bit about the vision that we have in mind from an economic development perspective. So we want to enable Ottawa to achieve its full potential, to be globally recognized as an innovative, future-ready city, the best place to work and live. That's what we have in mind. We really do believe that we can achieve that statement. We have an enormous amount of work to do. And so all of the effort that we have, if I look at the venture development piece, this is the area of domestic entrepreneurship building. This is where we build companies locally. We go through various stages of programming. And if we're doing it right, we're presenting a lot of companies that we can scale up globally and really help to create those juggernaut businesses that we all want. But it starts with the intake that you see at the funnel side of this chart. We take in all kinds of different companies, Main Street companies. We take in digital companies. We take in a lot of big ideas from universities and colleges, and we try to bring them alive in our accelerator and our incubator. I'll take you through a little bit more of that later on, but venture development is a critical part, a factory, if you will, of creating companies in our region. Then we have another component to our business, which most cities have across Canada. This is the area of that pure economic development, where you're trying to attract foreign investment into your region to bring jobs to the region from other markets. And this is an area that we have a lot of experience in. Foreign direct investment, as well as business retention and expansion. What we changed in our business model is we're leveraging that capability as a team to take the businesses that we're building out of venture development and take them global. As we're attracting foreign companies to come to our region, we're taking our domestic companies to those foreign markets. There's a lot of great examples of how that works. This is a unique business model for Ottawa. In some respects, it's kind of like Mars and Toronto Global combined, just at a smaller scale in our region, to put that into perspective. So based on having both of these areas of business under one roof, the next level of this is to synchronizing our efforts around specific markets. And so you'll often hear technical terms like blockchain and Bitcoin and artificial intelligence, machine learning. I'm a far bigger believer in market-led focus. And so with the post-secondaries, we spent time as part of our strat planning process to identify the 4 markets where we really want to move out ahead from a programming perspective, look around corners, if you will. And so with all 4 post-secondaries, we've decided upon these 4 markets. One is government transformation. We're a G7 country. We're a G7 capital, the smallest. But we do have a great capability here that we can take to the world. Secondly, we have a focus on healthcare. We have 5 research hospitals in the region and quite a strong undertow of capability that I know we can build on. Third is smart cities with a heavy focus on autonomous vehicles, things like IoT, other technobabble I can throw in there, but we have a great capability that we can take to the world, take to global markets. And fourth, and this one was not obvious to me as I was studying this, precision agriculture is an area of, I think, great opportunity for our city, given that we're such a rural city, which is something that I learned along the way. Great potential that we have with respect to precision agriculture, that again, I believe we can become a very strong global player, and everyone has to eat. So what that leads to is a focus on market-led innovation. This, I believe, is the differentiation that we bring to markets. This is how we will stand out from the herd. And this is our strategic plan in motion. I'll move to the next slide, please. Actually, just before I do that, let me take a quick example just to illustrate the point. I think many of you were at the fall autonomous vehicle event that was held in Canada, where we had a Lincoln Continental all teched out with autonomous vehicle technology, largely from QNX and companies like Nokia and Ericsson and so on. and they did a tour around city streets. It was a first for Canada on 2 levels. Firstly, we did it on public roads. Secondly, it wasn't like we had cars that had cameras that were trying not to bump into curbs. This was hooked up to live city infrastructure, so it was a really big deal. What you may not know from that day is QNX as a company has been in the embedded software business for probably 3 generations. 35 plus years doing this. They are embedded in 60% of the world's cars, either as infotainment system, operating systems, security systems. So they have a supply chain connection that is undeniably strong. And when you wrap around that all the companies that we have in our region that are connected in the world of data, networks, IoT, it creates a competitive advantage that we have and has helped us to secure companies recently like Origo from the UK. And if you've been to Bayview Yards, we've got one of their pod cars in our front credenza area, which is really quite interesting. And so it is attracting real investment into our region. It's around capability of talent. These companies see that capability, they come and invest in it, and it makes our flywheel spin much faster. This is the capability I'm talking about when I talk about specific market areas of focus. We want to do that in the other areas as well and develop that capability. And we would do all of these things because we want our children and their children to have great job prospects when they're ready to enter the workforce. We're in a very good position to do these things, and this is why we do what we do. So I want to talk a little bit about venture development client impacts, just by the numbers. This is going to be tricky, Joanne, because there's a lot of buttons to push here. So we have, if you look at all of the clients we've touched over 5 years, we have a unique set of client identifiers of over 1,500. Every year we provide services to, on average, about 338. So we're pretty active. It's a lot of effort. It's coaching, mentoring, business services. And it's, if you look at the numbers, 41,000 plus hours have been provided over that 5-year period, and 2,900 jobs created. Now that includes Main Street as well as digital jobs that have been created, so it's the broad spectrum. And we've been able to attract over $320 million worth of capital investment to those companies to help bring them alive. The other thing I want to note is we've also run a ton of workshops. Every year we run many programs. 26,000 attendees of our workshops over 5 years, and this is everything from how to file your first commercial tax return to figuring out how to protect your intellectual property. Last week we had Shopify run a digital Main Street event to help companies that are, bricks and mortar companies, e-commerce their business, and that was standing room only event. We're definitely going to be doing that one again, but very wide range of capability that we have. I've got a number of quotes that are the result of some work we had Deloitte do. We did some benchmarking. Given that Bayview is fresh and new, we wanted to baseline how our operations performing. So Deloitte did a lot of work. They have a ton of credibility in the space because they've done work with Mars and Communitech and the entire One Network, which is the Ontario network of entrepreneurs. They've done a lot of research, and they helped us to understand the impact of what is happening at Invest Ottawa and most recently at Bayview Yards. We had them look at a number of things to develop an economic model. So what is Invest Ottawa's impact really having on the economy? And so when they looked at those metrics, what they looked at were things like tax, new revenues generated, areas of our business that have very direct impact. And they discovered that for every dollar of public money that goes into Invest Ottawa, $6.43 is generated in terms of economic value. So we wanted to turn the dial up on that and try to come up with, what would it take to really take Bayview Yards and sweat the asset hard and just produce as much outcome as we can. What kind of impact would we get if we put 275% investment in? And we get a lot of these funds from the province and the federal government. And with that kind of investment, we could go from 643 to 1553. Which is significant output. So the point of it is that the work that they've done is helped us to understand the potential we have. We've got a really good, strong momentum today with more investment. We are focused on that with the province and with the federal government and with industry to take advantage of what we've got sitting at Bayview Yards. This will only increase as the LRT network gets spread out across the city. So I think tons of potential here. And you can see some of the comments that we've got through the Deloitte research just up on the slide. Move to some examples of companies that are currently at Bayview Yards. Actually, one of them has graduated this past summer, Farm Lead. The grocer, which is co-founded, you can see our Prime Minister in there. We had a visit by our Prime Minister in April, which was a fun day for us. Lita Burke and Corey Ellis, who are standing there inside of a sea container that we have installed at Bayview Yards. It's been teched out with hydroponic tech. It produces 250 pounds of fresh produce a week. There are 7 of these installed in the Arctic, and you can see the social entrepreneurship underpinnings of this business. That company is doing incredibly well. The 2 founders came out of Ottawa U Startup Garage, and they're now have an employee set, I think, of 7, and they've got 2 hires in the works. There was a Fast Company article that came out, and they've identified this company as one of the top 12 world-changing ideas on food production. That's March of this year. So this is a company that's up and coming. They did a Dragon's Den review recently. We don't know what the outcome is. We'll know that in the fall, but this is a company to watch in our region. The second is Farm Lead. This is a company that graduated from our accelerator last August. Farm Lead is a company that they basically buy and provide a very simple way of buying and selling grain products. They've created a digital marketplace. The 2 founders include Brennan Turner and Alain Gorbeau, who are actually grew up on farms. They know the farm industry well. They're just really, really well-educated, smart farmers who have created this system. They now have 750 buyers that are certified, and they have 10,000 farmers that take advantage of this system today. When they graduated from our site, they created an office in Ottawa, so they're downtown Ottawa, and they're also in Chicago. And their business is growing. They have 40 employees now. They'll be 50 by the end of the year. So this is a great local success story. And for the second year in a row, they've been named to the top 25 most innovative ag tech companies in the world by Forbes. So these are the kind of companies that we're creating here in Ottawa. Very excited to have them in our midst. Now I've got a couple of healthcare examples. One is Snap Clarity. This is Terry's story. Terry is actually presenting at an event we held at Bayview a couple of weeks ago that puts a spotlight on mental health issues. The point of her business is to provide access to quality mental health care anytime, anywhere. Terry herself has 20 years of experience in the sector, and she's built a capability that was just beta released as part of this event 2 weeks ago, now available on the Apple Store, and really excited to see what the potential is. This one is a big one to watch as well. I think it's going to really go places. And then finally, we have Wellbe. We have Liz Odette-Bordeaux, who's the CEO of this company. This is a company that currently employs 7 people, and they're hiring. What they do is they provide technology to help older adults stay connected to their loved ones. So if you can think of Apple Watches, tablets, Fitbit technology, it keeps track of what their loved ones in other homes or in their own home are doing so they don't feel isolated. There's a lot of research that underpins this that shows the more connected people feel as they get older and require more assistance, the more engaged and connected they feel, and the more healthy they are. And so Elizabeth's business is doing quite well. It's building. We have the CIO, Alex Benet, CIO of Canada there, getting a tour. She has met a lot of different organizations with her company. Things are going very, very well. So these are all companies sitting in Bayview Yards, either graduated or going through. We have 34 in total right now, and we're actually going through a whole roster of bringing in a new, fresh group of companies into our incubator. Now I want to move to foreign direct investment and trade, specifically our global expansion team. We did some work through KPMG. KPMG is actually here with us today. I think they did a tremendous job on this economic impact study, and it gives a good understanding of what the impact of our foreign direct investment and trade work has been over the last 5 years. And so, Joanne, if you can step through this. Thank you. And so over 5 years, 3,000 direct jobs that have been created. 2,054 additional jobs. Through the research, the work was done using StatsCan modeling to determine an appropriate model around induced and additional jobs that are created from the initial set of jobs. What works for us in Ottawa is the fact that we've got a really strong, high-value, high-paying jobs, which opens up opportunity for more economic development around those high-paying jobs and individuals that will spend more in the region and so on. So the total is about 5,000 jobs over 5 years in our global expansion business. If you turn that into GDP numbers, 684 million GDP. And for every 100 jobs produced, $23 million in GDP. So a very significant impact there. And then if we look at taxes, it breaks down to $103 million in taxes. This is just personal taxes. So this is either personal tax that you would pay, but also tax on property. And then that would translate to $24 million in tax for the municipality. But what we didn't calculate in here was corporate realty tax. So we did some work with CBRE, who many of you will be familiar with. And they estimate that conservatively about $4.2 million a year would be produced. So the 24 becomes $45 million pretty quickly. And so pretty good impact on what you see from the work of our foreign direct investment business, specifically our global expansion team. I think I'll move then to the next slide, just to put a little bit of an example here in place. Centronic is a Swedish company that joined us in 2014. I note up on the slide here that we landed an employee in a soft landing space. That's a fancy way of saying we made space for them in our office and provided them business services and helped them to get established. And then a few years later, they've got 200 employees. This is a company that has 1,030 employees worldwide. So 200 employees in Ottawa is a pretty significant investment for them to make. They have a plan to be at double that by 2021. They've recently expanded their facility footprint to 36,000 square feet. Which also a significant investment in our region. They provide product lifecycle services at an engineering level, and so having them sit in Ottawa covering markets that they're very accustomed to, like telecommunications, defense, medical devices, they're right at home in Ottawa. So it's wonderful to see their progression in our city, and they're one of many stories. We'll maybe move to the next slide to illustrate that. And so when you look across the work that our global expansion teams do, they try to build businesses that land here that are foreign businesses, but they also try to, of course, scale domestic businesses. I think probably the fastest growing company in the city is Ascent, which currently has just under 300 employees. They've raised $60 million in capital investment to build their business. And they're in a really interesting space right across from Saint Laurent Shopping Center. Just around the corner from them is Lixar. Lixar is a company that has had a steady growth. They're a data company, and they've got high-profile clients like NASCAR, where they're using IoT and data techniques to keep track of the performance of cars. So we've got companies in our midst that are really active in these global markets. Lixar, of course, right across the street from Saint Laurent Shopping Center, as is Ibersoft. Many other companies in our region. Pythian is in Westboro, fairly close to Bayview Yards. Redoc is downtown. They have proposal management software, which is quite strong. We have companies like Boeing that are in the downtown core, and we've got lots of companies in Canada too. I'm going to just click one more time, Joanne. In the center, I just wanted to tell a little bit of a story of the progression of how these companies all interrelate. So Fluidware is a company that was created in 2008 by a couple of people you probably know. So Ali Fati and Aidan Mirze. And this is a company that at the time did really strong survey technology. They were acquired by SurveyMonkey in 2014. SurveyMonkey decided to select this organization to increase their own capability, and they've actually grown the overall employee base to well over 100 employees. They're down on York Street right now. And then the original co-founders of Fluidware created Fellow, so Aidan has created Fellow. He's in our incubator as well at Bayview Yards. software technology that helps managers provide coaching and feedback to employees in a modern workforce way. And MindBridge, which I think everybody is familiar with, a company that is really growing. I think they're probably neck and neck with Ascent in terms of growth. They provide artificial intelligence and machine learning, but to the audit sector. So if you want auditors to look around corners, MindBridge is your company. And so they're right across from Science Tech Museum, just down in Saint Laurent as well. So these are just sort of a range of companies that we've seen significant growth from, and we're very lucky in Ottawa that we have great tech diversity in our city. Now I want to quickly move to complete some of the work that KPMG had done. So these are more comments from KPMG on what has been really reported by a number of the companies that they did some research with. But we also had benchmarking done, so it wasn't enough just to do a little bit of research on economic impact. How do we stack up against other cities? So we looked at 6 cities in total, including ours. And there was a few that really stood out for me. I really thought the work on Calgary was good, given that Calgary has gone through an economic boom and then bust, and then all of the effort they've done to diversify their economy to go beyond oil and gas. And the other one for me that stood out was Montreal International. They've got an incredible program on talent attraction into their region, and one that I think we really need to look at. But if I look at the numbers, Ottawa is modestly invested in, and we're probably middle of the pack in terms of performance, which I think is actually pretty good. So we perform well, we're a bit of a budget team, and I think what it tells me when I look at Calgary and I look at Montreal is there's opportunity for growth if we choose to look at going down that track, and I really hope that we do. So let's go down to maybe bring this home. So our strat plan is based on 3 strategic objectives. Each objective has 3 strategies. Each strategy has 3 actions. So we have 27 action items that are underway. The majority of them are funded. Some that aren't, we're doing everything we can to be productive in delivering everything that we can deliver. So we've done a lot in terms of restructuring, rebuilding our team. We've changed the bylaws of Invest Ottawa and Bayview Yards to have one membership of board members. We've revectored our committee structures. We have completely changed our business structure. We have changed over many of the roles inside of what we do. So we're quite optimized at this point. We're changing the methodology that we provide incubation and acceleration services at Bayview. So I feel very good about what we've done to really optimize our business. There's 2 other areas, though, that we work on. Passionately driving market-led innovation. This gets to the point I made around our post-secondaries and healthcare, government, and so on as being target markets. But then also, if we do a great job on operationalizing our plan and being great in markets, if we don't have a strong plan on talent, we really won't achieve our full potential because we won't have the resources to make it all happen. And so I think for me, if I look at it, we have a lot invested through the province and the federal government, and we're chasing more investment with them and industry to help support our venture development business. If we're going to attract companies to Ottawa and talent to Ottawa, we really do need to look for additional support going forward. And so we will come back to provide options to this committee and as part of the 2019-2022 process to determine if there's an appetite for looking at additional investment in our business so that we can achieve the full potential of our region. I do want to thank a few people just as I close up. We have had a ton of support from our board members and committee members. They're all volunteers. We get a tremendous amount of support from Stephen Willis and from John and his team and from Donna Gray and her team. Steve Kanalakis has been very helpful to me personally as in my first year and a bit in role. Also a ton of support from our sponsors and all of the volunteers. We couldn't deliver the programming we deliver without a whole bunch of support from the people around us. So with that, I'll close and open up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tremblay. So we do have a few questions. We start with Councillor Dean, then Councillor Hubley, and Councillor Harder. Anyone else? Councillor
Councillor
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the comprehensive presentation. And I can feel the excitement, and I think there's lots of reasons to be optimistic with what's happening and the talent that we're attracting. But I have to say, when I was listening to you speak, I couldn't help but let my mind kind of go to Donald Trump's America. And you were talking about your strategic plan and global expansion, and yet we seem to be coming into a very protectionist time. And for me, you're talking about how we attract new talent, and I couldn't help but think maybe somebody should be thinking about how we bulletproof the jobs we have here if there's to be a global trade war, if there's to be a breakdown of NAFTA, and how vulnerable are we in this city, and how vulnerable are our jobs to that breakdown in global trade.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's a great question, Councillor. So the way that I think about that is the trade war seems to be the world with the United States. And I think the good news we have is we have a very strong global expansion team with a lot of experience in those markets. And so I think it would be very smart of us as a region to build on that and to ensure that our trade connections with other markets is extremely strong. So I think one thing that most Canadians would have gleaned from what's happening with the United States right now is our dependence on the United States. I think we need to ensure that that is as strong as it can be, but we need to build out in other markets. Another point that you made that is really resonating with the talent piece for me is we have, I mentioned, 27,000 STEM students enrolled in Ottawa. Part of that is because we bring in a lot of international students. And so with the right programming, we should be able to convince a portion of them to not leave Canada, to stay in Ottawa so we can build up our talent pool right here. It doesn't mean that we don't go and hit other markets to bring in more experienced talent to bring back. But it is an opportunity that's a bit unique to Ottawa. Other cities really don't have that available to them. So I'd answer with those 2 points. Thank you for your question.
And maybe just following up to Mr. Smith, is somebody in this organization looking at where our jobs might be vulnerable if there is to be some sort of a trade war and how we might protect those jobs?
Mr. Chairman, I think this is where the scan that Invest Ottawa has done in terms of really focusing on those key sectors that are seen as a real opportunity. So in terms of are we doing a scan in terms of where we're vulnerable, we're not doing a scan on that. But what we are doing, we are recognizing where the opportunities are and how we can position ourselves in the best way possible to capitalize on what we have and what we can bring to the table and how we can position ourselves on the global stage. And I think what Invest Ottawa has been doing and really keying in on those 4 key market areas is really going to position us in a very strong way where we can continue to grow and diversify our economy within sort of that global marketplace and insulate ourselves in terms of what some of those fractious disruptors might be that are coming from elsewhere. If you build up and have a strong sort of ecosystem that you're working within, you're much more insulated from what might happen from the outside.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. Councillor Hubley.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. First, if I may, I'll start with John. The Smart City initiative that we've been working on, Councillor Harder, myself, and Councillor Tierney, along with your folks, one of the goals we had of that was to make it a term of council priority for the next council. Would this be a part of that if we could get more investment into attracting the talent here for our companies?
So, and Mr. Wills might step in and help me with a little bit of this as well, because I know there's been ongoing discussions, but as you recall, the Smart City 2.0 had 3 key thrusts associated with it. One was digital services, which is really something that's being run through Ms. Gray's shop in terms of how we deliver services in a much more efficient way within the digital world that we're in. The other one was the whole area around connectivity, which is a piece that we really need to take a hard look at, make sure that we have that strong backbone infrastructure to really support the digital data collection, analytics, and so on that we need to have put in place. We have a very strong sort of infrastructure system right now, but it needs to be much more robust than where it is, particularly when you're talking about the rural area. And then the third area was really focused on economic development, and that's really, I think, where Invest Ottawa and what they're doing this strat plan. So each of these buckets is not independent of one another. They're all very interrelated. So there clearly is a direction in terms of the digital services strategy to be a general council priority. We're definitely moving forward in terms of developing that overall economic development strategy, and we're having ongoing discussions on the connectivity piece to make sure that we, in fact, are advancing ourselves to the best way possible so that we, in fact, have that backbone infrastructure that we can capitalize on.
Did you want to add anything to that, Mr. Willis?
Yes, Mr. Deputy Vice Chair. Certainly in the next term of Council strategic priorities, we will be identifying potential actions for Council to focus in on in each of the three theme areas. That's still very early days, but we do see through the departmental work plans advancing it, even if they weren't necessarily identified as strategic priorities.
Okay, because other than trees, this is one of the few things that we as a public service or government can invest in that actually appreciates. And so I think it's something we want to make sure. Thank you, Mr. Trombley, for the presentation, and I'll say highlight that for members of council, that this is every dollar we put in there, you leverage that into many, many more. So thank you for your work and to your team. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hobley. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you so much for that presentation. It's actually, you make the best presentations that we've had in economic development. I've seen a few of them, and you make it very, very clear. I'm also happy to see that you're highlighting that high-tech isn't just in Canada, it's right through the whole city. And mostly, we have a large concentration there. The rest are more dispersed, but they're still extremely important. Probably 2/3 are not in Canada, and that's something we sometimes forget. One of the things that I'd like to sort of follow up on is some of the barriers that Councillor Dean's raised about the American thing. One of my residents told me he works for IBM, and he was going to the States for a meeting with IBM, and he got stopped at the border and turned back. So what he's doing now is arrange with IBM. He telecommutes with them to make sure it happens. But that's, I think, a symptom of things that are starting to happen already. And this is not a person of visible minority or anything. He's a kind of a white person like we are. He's very similar to long-term Canadians. So it wasn't for that reason. It was simply because he worked in an industry and they didn't like the fact he worked for industry centered in the United States but was in Canada. So I don't know how much you can work on that, but I think it has to be on your list to take a look at and also to provide guidance to people who run into this kind of situation. He was able to work it out, but I'm not sure that everybody is. Promotion of Ottawa as a high-tech center. We have more technology here per capita than anybody else, but nobody seems to know that. I still hear all the time, Toronto, Waterloo in Ontario, all the time, from government, from public, from all sorts. So are you working with Tourism Ottawa and various other things to try to get a better understanding that Ottawa isn't just the capital of Canada, that's a function of government, but we also have an economic function that is crucial for Canada, not just for Ottawa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor. I think the first point was a comment that I agree with, and so we definitely need to work on that. The second part is really around this idea of promoting Ottawa. So if any of you have seen the original Amazon HQ2 video that we did, it got a lot of hits out there. We've repurposed it to provide a general view of Ottawa, which I think is very powerful. That was actually in partnership with tourism. So we do a lot with tourism. We're trying to make every nickel we have count, and so we put everything that we can into it. That's really more of a question of investment than anything else. And so I think that we've done the best we can with the resource pool we have. I do think it is a time to amp it up. But what I would recommend is, if we're going to do it, we don't do it and send it into the wild. We do it and we focus on GovTech markets, we focus on healthcare, we focus on smart cities, and we focus on agricultural markets, so that our voice will carry further and into specific markets around the world where they will actually hear it. And so I think that if we're focused, we'll get far better connection and reach. I think that's just purely a matter of investment.
Well, all of those are technology oriented anyway, so I have no problem with that. I think it's important that we do let them know how broad-based we are. The other thing is, you talked about talent. You know there's about 3,000 jobs they can't fill in Canada now that are fairly high level. They're not entry jobs. And I know you've been working on this for some time, but is there something we can do as a council even to help you and try to encourage people with the kind of skills we need to understand they not only can get a really good job here, but a sustainable job?
Thank you for that question. So what we have been doing is we've been using very low-cost digital tools. You know that those annoying things that pop up when you're searching the web. But we've been able to get 6 million hits across different areas in the U.S. The focus has been on the U.S., and obviously given world events, we need to shift that. But we've hit New York City, we've hit Dallas, we've hit several locations in Silicon Valley, we've hit Boston. Those 6 million hits have translated into 6,000 people going to our Work in Ottawa site and actually wanting to subscribe to the site to see what's going on. It sounds like a bad ratio, but it's not a bad ratio. To me, again, this is really a question of investment. And so what I would say to that is as we come back with options on the talent file, please look at them closely, because the gateway to doing this is we really do need to put resources in. It's the one area that we really don't have much resource involved in it. I look at the benchmarking with other regions. If you're in Calgary, you've got people on talent. You really do want to protect the work that you want to be able to do and attract industries in. And any major company that's looking at a city is looking at capability, and they're looking at local talent. They won't come if they don't see both. And so that to me is extremely important.
And it's a shortage. They're afraid they won't get them, although some of them do try to steal them, so we know.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. That's important. I just want to let you know we're updating the Canada North study this year with the BIA, and that will give us updated population figures and things which we will feed into you. Once we get that, we should have it by fall. I think it's underway now. And I think that will be helpful for that area, and I'd encourage those to happen elsewhere in the city if it could be done. And a smart city, I think key to any city is the infrastructure in smart cities. I know Hydro Ottawa has been helping with fiber and various things as well as some of the private companies, but I think it's crucial that we have the basic infrastructure needed for a smart city, and that's a city responsibility. So I think what Councillor Blue was talking about is so crucial to making sure that we continue to move forward. Because if businesses come here and they can't get the fiber they need, they won't come here. And other things of that nature.
I agree, Councillor, yeah.
The final thing I want to talk about is the city services to business areas. We have a number of these around the city, not just Canada. And we find, I hear complaints all the time about the poor city services. Anywhere outside the Greenbelt is suffering this. I know they suffer in Barrhaven, I know they suffer in Orleans as well. Is getting people to and from work is becoming actually critical in my area, and I think it's pretty bad in other areas as well. It's whether they think they're paying their taxes and they're being ignored because everything goes downtown, everything's fed to make the federal government downtown look nice. And if West Ottawa has a role in that, I think it does have to ensure that we get those, because I'm worried that businesses could leave. I know they're enticed all the time to go to Gatineau, and they pay them to go, and some have already gone. And we have to put the importance of providing that service, which doesn't seem to be in the psyche somehow. It's we do it for the people where they live. We forget about the place where people work, and there's growing areas across the city where this is happening. And
Councillor, we have a question, Councillor.
Yeah, the question is what's the support they're going to do to try to make sure we get the services we need in the business place.
Thank you, Councillor. If it twigs an element that we're working on that I think could actually be helpful to different regions within the City of Ottawa. So we're working closely with the post-secondaries as part of all of that engagement we've been having with them to do something they're describing as the education city. So I think what you'll see over the coming years is the 4 post-secondaries popping up in different parts of the city within West Ottawa as a way to be more present in communities around the city, to get the message out that we are there to support applied research, new business thinking, and ultimately the commercialization of that and the innovation that comes with it. And so I think that you'll see that happen over the next year to 2 years. We do have one in mind that we'll have as kind of a beta site that we'll do within a few months. So it's coming, and I think it'll have an impact in the way that you've asked.
I know those are happening. That's in the education level, not upgrading, and that's good. But if people can't get to work, which is basic infrastructure, that's also a problem that I think you could at least, if you hear about it, just put your voice to and say, we have to deal with this.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay,
we'll look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Any other question to Ms. Okay, Councillor Harder.
So thank you very much for coming today. It's been a real pleasure for me to work so closely with you, with our small group of staff, between Donna Gray's shop and certainly Steve Willis's shop and the NCC. And as you know, we're doing some amazing things. It's very exciting. And I know that Councillor Dean's opened the door on the what's happening with the tariffs and the NAFTA and et cetera, but I mean I would imagine that Blair, and I see Blair here today, is keeping a good eye on the international. So like I was reading an article from the I think National Farm Association about Japan and they're concerned about our grain from out west and that. And so as you know, we are pulling together here locally the Agra Eastern Lowlands, and of course we have a ton of agriculture here that we're working on as well, on things like traceability and that. So can you just talk a little bit from your perspective of how you're engaging with other innovation centers across Ontario, first of all, because with the brand new government, that's a whole new opportunity. What kind of outreach there's been, now that you know the ministers, et cetera, and then across Canada.
Thanks, Councillor. That's a great question. So we are re-engaging. I think that it's going to take a little bit of time through transition to really understand where everybody is sitting in this. The way that we work with other incubators may depend on how the new government receives the one review. I mentioned that in my comments. The Ontario Network for Entrepreneurs, Deloitte actually did a fair bit of work in the preparation of that. There was a subcommittee put in place. They looked at the performance of the investments made during the last probably dozen years anyways in investments into innovation in Ontario. And many of the recommendations were extremely favorable to our region. I think what it points out is the nascent potential of Ottawa and how we could actually lift other parts of the Eastern Ontario up by being what they were describing as a provincial innovation center. And so my hope is that we actually go down that track, because that can also be a feeder into our business model for generating companies and business, in particular in agriculture. I actually think that's a natural for us. For example, having the many companies that are developed in the Kingston area around Queens, who we partner with a lot, could add quite a bit of momentum into our regional innovation center, especially around those four themes. I think of it around those focus areas, Jen, and I'm actually quite excited on the precision agriculture one. At the start, it took me a while to understand the potential, but once I did, the penny dropped, and that is truly a growth market. Everyone's got to eat, and no one has complete control or ownership of the market. So I really do think we have a lot of good ingredients to make that work.
Right, and the work that we're doing that ties into the tech and techies and that, with the traceability and the interest of like the Farm Boy and that large companies that, and then of course the work that we're doing with the experimental farm and that big data analytics and et cetera, the digitization and that sharing the information. I think that a real coup for us here in Ottawa that we haven't used in the past, but what we're knowing now is the departments that also believe that they should not be working as silos, which they have been. It gives us a distinct advantage here in Ottawa as the nation's capital on a global stage. When you have the Canadian Food Inspection Agency that's interested in working with Ag, that's interested in working with NRC, that's interested, and they know that they're better and stronger, as is Canada, by working together. I think we're at a phenomenal crossroads, and I really urge you to and I'm not trying to spend your money or our money, Mr. Kanalakis, or the mayor's money, before budget, but it's a conversation that we have to have. We have just embarked on a brand new department relatively under Mr. Smith. From what we see on our little team that's working on all of this, we don't have the capacity with the investment we're making right now. Mr. Willis has been playing a key role, as Donna Gray, as I said, and just understanding, like we have so much opportunity coming our way, and we can only be, I think, nimble for so long before it's actually going to take some money, and understanding that the investment will be worth that. The results will be worth the investment. Thanks very much for coming out today. I always learn something from you talking to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harder, and thank you, Mr. Tremblay and Mr. Smith, for your presentation. On a presentation received. Thank you. And with that, folks, notice of motion for consideration from a subsequent meeting. We have none. Inquiries? See none. Adjournment. So moved. And the next meeting is August 7, 2018. Thank you, folks. August 7. August 7, 2018.